So today is going to be the lightning introduction session. Today is going to be a lightning introduction session. We are trying to understand. We are trying to understand today what is lightning component framework. Why the Salesforce has introduced lightning. A quick difference between a quick and important difference between Visualforce and lightning framework. Why the lightning is more demanding in the market, and what is the feature scope, right? So as part of the introduction sessions, instead I just start the technical things today. We'll try to understand. Unable to see the screen, please log off and log in back again. I believe everyone is able to see my screen. Okay, some of you have any issues, then please log off and log in back and see. That may resolve your issue sometimes. Okay, right. So what is a lightning component framework and why the Salesforce has introduced lightning, and difference between Visualforce and lightning framework, why the lightning is demanding in the market, and what is the feature scope. It means, is there any upgrade happening next to the lightning, whether lightning is the one going to be continued with the Salesforce application framework development, or is there anything is going to extended with lightning. Okay, we are not going to replace the lightning. Okay, instead, is there any new features Salesforce has introduced in addition to lightning? So that's what we are going to discuss today as the first day of the session. Okay, first thing, why Salesforce has introduced lightning, right? Instead, let me first discuss about why Salesforce has introduced the lightning. Every implementations in lightning was happening with the help of S-force control, S controller or S-force controller. Every implementation was happening, every application we implement was in the beginning when the Salesforce has introduced the application development framework. Everything was with the help of S-force controller. S-force controller is nothing but your Ajax toolkit, what you have seen in your development part of your session. Okay, some of you in your right, some of you attended the development course, you might be aware of Ajax toolkit. And if any one of you working in the real-time projects, working employees, you might have come across Ajax toolkit, where we included the library, JavaScript library, uh, but developed by Salesforce, and then we can write we can access with the server, we can connect with the server from the JavaScript with the help of sforce.connection methods. sforce.connection.query, we can query the database. sforce.connection.insert, we can insert record into the database. sforce.connection.update, we can update record into the object. So we can interact from the JavaScript directly with the server. So that was the framework initially we had. Then Salesforce was introduced Visualforce page. Visualforce tags. So Visualforce component-based development framework. Visualforce component-based framework. So what is a development? Why they have introduced? The Visualforce tags, whatever we are using, it does an inbuilt tag. Most of the tags are standard tags where we need not write the script. We need not write our script, and we can interact with the database with the help of inbuilt components. We can interact with the database with the help of inbuilt components. We can create an UI with less effort. So compared to your Ajax toolkit, they develop the framework based on MVC architecture, where the developer can work on the UI part using Visualforce tags, and controller part where developer can write the business logic with the help of Apex, and the model is going to be your objects. So we separated the three layers. The three layers are separated. Okay, developers can work on individually on the controller part, and developers can work on Visualforce part. Okay, and I have a a dedicated person will work on data modeling. So that's a advantage we have with the MEC architecture based on, which is a Visualforce based component development framework. So we reduce the effort of writing our own script with the help of JavaScript. We go with the inbuilt standard components, which will help the developers to create a sophisticated UI without building the script. Then Salesforce introduced Lightning Component Framework. What is the difference? Why the Salesforce has introduced Lightning Component Framework? Everything is going to be a component based framework. A component based framework. In Lightning as well, we are going to have a inbuilt standard Lightning components using which we are going to develop the UI. What is the difference between your Visualforce and Lightning? Lightning will able to, using Lightning, you can able to develop the application that can run in any device. A responsive UI, a responsive application you can create. In the case of Visualforce, you develop an applications separately for your desktop, separately for your tab or mobile. To build the responsive UI here, you need to add a lot of script. You need to add a lot of script to make your applications a more responsive application. But in the case of Lightning, everything is inbuilt. The Lightning framework itself is providing you the features where you can develop a responsive application and look and feel, which will give you a rich look and feel. You can also visualize in our login.salesforce.com. Compared to your Salesforce classic look, your Lightning interface, your Lightning experience is giving you a rich UI. We're going to discuss about more detail about what is the important difference between Visualforce and the Lightning component framework. Right. So what is next to Lightning component? Now Salesforce introduced LWC, which is nothing but a Lightning web component. So in short, is called as LWC. So LWC is again another extended development. They're extending the development. In addition to Lightning component development, they introduce LWC in the period 2018 end, or you can say in the 2019. It's now in progress. It means you can expect the future is going to be in LWC along with the Lightning component. So we have if you create an application, a less percentage you will see, you'll depend on Lightning component and more percentage towards the LWC. So that's going to be the future. But currently the Lightning makes more demand. Okay, so this is a kind of a technical, is a kind of evaluations happening in the case of application framework. So what are all these frameworks based on? All these frameworks is mostly concentrated on user interface. So user interface framework, right? Your Visualforce is basically the view part of your MEC architecture. Your Lightning component, again, is an UI framework. Your LWC is going to be an UI framework. So what is a backend? Backend is always going to be your Apex. Okay, only we got a development in the user interface. Your backend is always going to be in Apex. So your Apex, your business logic layer remains the same. Your business logic layer remains the same. Only the user interface, we had evaluation starting from S controller and Visualforce stack, Lightning component, and the LWC. Right? What is the key objective of Salesforce? Why they have upgraded the framework one after the other? The main objective is to improve the performance of the application, increase the reusability of the module. Right? You create once and use it multiple times. Whenever you need. You need not recreate the same component again and again. And improve the performance, reusability, and a rich UI, a responsive UI. When I say responsive UI, it means the application should be able to run in any type of devices, not just in desktop. Your classic application is basically meant for a desktop application, right? The classic application is basically meant for a desktop, where in the case of all the development happening, in order to improve the performance, to make the component development, increase the reusability of the components, and to provide a rich UI compared to your traditional look and feel with the help of Lightning component framework. We can able to create the application with customized look and feel, with rich UI and responsive UI. The application can run in any type of devices. That's the whole objective why we are upgrading towards a lot of new features down the line. You will be able to follow this. What exactly the Lightning component framework? What is the difference when compared to your traditional way of developing the application? I have a server here. I have a client here. So this is my server and this is my client. So I have a Visualforce page here. I have my Visualforce page. So assume this is my Visualforce page. This is my Visualforce page, and this is my Lightning UI. So this is my Visualforce page UI. This is my Lightning UI. So in short, this is my traditional one, and this is my new component development based on Lightning framework. So what happens when we enter the data here? When I enter the data and submit the information, I enter the data and submit the information. What happens? A control goes to the server. The control goes to the server. So how we are going to execute the page? Just execute the URL, right? So the request goes as a HTTP request, HTTP a GET request, right? A HTTP post request or GET request. Then we get a response. We get a response in the form of HTML. We get a response in the form of HTML, right? So what happens when you get the response in the form of HTML? Your Visualforce page will be reloaded. It will reload the page every time when you get a response from the server. It will reload the page, Visualforce page, every time you get the response from the server. So this is your traditional way of interacting with the server. This is a traditional way of interacting with the server. We just post the request and get the response, and we get the response in the form of HTML. When you get a response in the form of HTML, then your Visualforce page will be reloaded. Reloaded every time you get the response. Any data I modified, I submit it, then I get the response in the form of HTML. Then my Visualforce page get reloaded. We can avoid reloading the entire page. We can avoid only the part of the page. To implement a part of the page refresh, we have to go with a different other scripting framework. We are going this scripting framework, right? We can use a JavaScript remote. We can go with Ajax toolkit. So to make the page, to make the page only to reload only the part of the page, to make the page more responsive, only the part of the page needs to be reloaded. I need to apply, I need to build, I need to implement a JavaScript, a scripting framework like your JavaScripting or Ajax toolkit I have to implement. But by default, your Visualforce page, the traditional framework, is always going to reload the page every time it interacts with the server, right? So let's discuss about what is the how the response is happening, how the request is okay, how the request is goes to the server, and how the response is happening. In the case of your Lightning component framework, in the Lightning component framework, we made a HTTP request similar to how the first time when you made HTTP request, and it loads the concerned component. It loads the concerned UI. The UI is basically a Lightning UI. It's again a HTML. And for any further changes or any further requests you are making to the server, any further changes you are submitting to the server, the request goes not in the form of HTTP, it goes in the form of Ajax request. It goes in the form of Ajax request. To make an Ajax request in your traditional application, what you have to do? You have to implement. We have to implement, in addition to your classic Visualforce framework, you have to implement the Ajax toolkit or JavaScript remoting. Your scripting framework you need to implement, embed into your Visualforce framework. Where in the case of your Lightning UI, which is also called single page application, whenever you made a request to the server, any changes, anything you like to request to the server, it goes as a Ajax call, okay, and you're not going to get the response in the form of JSON. A JSON is again a JavaScript job notation. Basically, if you people are attending the integrations course, you will come to know what is JSON. So you get the response in the form of JSON. Okay, whenever you made a request to Ajax request, only the information what you are going to retrieved in the JSON format, only that part of the portion will alone get refreshed. We are not going to refresh the entire page. We are not going to refresh the entire page. You might have noticed in your Lightning framework as well. Any I switch to Lightning. I go to some application. Okay, you just go to some page, any page, and any, right, any component, any link I go, my page, any component I go within the page, the response go to the server, the response go to the server, and my page is not refreshed. My page is not refreshed. Only that particular, the data alone get refreshed. Only that particular component alone get refreshed. Okay, so whenever I made a request to the server, in the case of your Lightning component framework, the request goes as Ajax and the response I get in the form of JSON. So only the part of the page is refreshed. Okay, so what is a big advantage when 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 you refresh only the part of the page? What is a big advantage, right? In the compared to a traditional application, whenever I reload the page, what happens? There is a internal memory mechanism called a view state. The view state will keep increase in the case of your traditional application framework, where the view state memory will keep increase. When it is close to the 175 KB, the performance will go down. The performance of your page will go down. Am I right? If the data is too large, will it not hit? Yes, of course. In the case of your Lightning framework, in the Lightning framework, most of the task is going to be handled in the client side. So that's a, that's the main difference we are going to discuss in the next slide. I'm going to elaborate that part. Okay, so the basic difference what I'm trying to show here is your traditional application, you get the response in the form of HTML. It means your entire page will get refreshed. In the case of Lightning framework, we are going to make a Ajax request every time we interact with the server. Okay, so this is not going to happen by building the script. This is a default behavior of your Lightning framework. Every request goes as Ajax. You get the response in the form of JSON. What is the nature of the response when you give? What is the nature of the JSON data? The JSON data, what you get in this response, only that portion will get refreshed, not like your HTML. It's like the entire document needs to be refreshed. Okay, so that's a basic difference between the client and traditional application and the Lightning framework. What is the other difference? What is the other difference we have? We have a difference how we are interacting with the server. How frequent you are going to interact with the server. That makes a huge difference between your Visualforce framework and Lightning framework. In the case of Visualforce page framework, I have my Visualforce page here, and this is my server. So this is my server. Right, and this is my Apex. So this is how the interaction is happening. I made a request to the server, and then, right, and so through Apex, we are interacting with the database. So this is my object, right? You can say object or database. So these are MEC architecture, the traditional MEC architecture. What happens? The same thing in your Lightning. the Lightning as the HTML portion is also called a Lightning component. Okay, so this is your UI. So this is your UI, and here my Visualforce page is a UI, which is a view part of your MEC architecture. Okay, and I have a JavaScript based controller. A JavaScript based controller I'm going to have here. Okay, so this is also called a client side controller. So we are going to have a true controller in the case of your Lightning framework. In the case of Lightning framework, I'm going to have a true controller. So this part is going to be same. So this part is going to be same. And where in the case of your Lightning framework, we are going to have a true controller. One is your a JavaScript based controller. I'll explain this detail. If you will have any questions, we can discuss at the end also. I'll have some time to discuss the questions. Okay. So till then, please put mute your side. Yeah. So this is your MEC architecture of your Visualforce page. Visualforce UI architecture is based on MEC architecture, where for every request, for every business logic, I need to depend on my Apex controller. So the control goes to the Apex, and from the Apex you interact with the database. So this is a traditional way of interacting with your database. This is a classic application. What is Lightning application? How it is interacting with the database? So Lightning application has as a UI part. A Lightning application has a UI part. Okay, so this is your client, and this is your server. Okay, so here this is a client, and this is a server. So what happens here? Most of your data processing, is most of your logic. Okay, most of your logic we are going to implement, we are going to handle in the client side controller. The controller is going to be based on a JavaScript. This is not your traditional JavaScript code. This is basically a JavaScript based on Lightning. It's a Lightning based JavaScript code. A Lightning based JavaScript code based on which we are going to write a controller here. So how many types of controller we have in the Lightning framework? We have two controller. One is called a server side controller. One is server side controller, and we have a client side controller. So what is the big advantage? We have a client side controller. Most of the business logic, most of the data processing, we are going to handle in the client side itself. Only when the client side controller cannot able to handle the problem, then we go to the server side controller. Only when the client side controller cannot able to handle the problem, handle the issues, then we go to the Apex side. Apex part is nothing but server side controller to interact with the database. So why we go for a server side controller? It means whenever I need a data from the database, only to query the data or any DML operation I need to do. Okay, then only in that scenarios I go to the server side, and rest of all the business processing, your data logic, you are going to write it in the client side controller itself. So this way we reduce the interaction with the server. Your Lightning component framework will provide a framework in terms of it providing you two controllers. One is a client side controller and another is a server side controller. So you do all the data processing, all the business logic, most of the business logic you are going to handle in the client side itself. Only when you depend on a data from a database, then you go to the server-side controller. So you reduce the interaction with the server as much as possible. So your performance of your application drastically improved compared to your a classic way of developing the application. Your MEC architecture, your Salesforce classic application is based on a traditional MEC architecture. Your page layout, basically a view part of your MEC architecture. Your inbuilt standard controller, your Apex, and your model is object. Where in the case of your Lightning application is also an MEC architecture based, but we have two controller here. One is a client-side controller, other one is a server-side controller. So this way, we reduce the interaction with the server. Obviously, the Lightning component framework, the application will perform a much more better than your a classic way of developing the application. We will be able to follow this. So we have two types of data storage, right? I also mentioned here data storage. So this is nothing but a temporary data storage where you can store the data in the client side itself. Like compared to your classic application, in Apex side we are going to have a get set variable, right? The get set variable is a place where you store the data temporarily in the view state mechanism, right? In the case of by using a view state, we are able to store the data temporarily in the internal storage called view state. This is a mechanism to store whatever data you are going to pass between the client and server. It's getting stored in the view state. So when you make a frequent interaction, when you made a frequent interaction with the server, in the case of classic Visualforce development applications, what happens? Your view state will get increased. Obviously, it will reduce the performance of your application. Where in the case of Lightning framework, we are not going to interact with the server all the time. Only when we need to get an updated, when you need a data from the object, right? The scenarios when you need data from the object, when you perform any DML operations, you go for server-side controller. In all the rest of the part, we are going to handle in the client side itself. On button click, okay, or you get the data and do all the data processing in your client side controller. I get some data, get the account data, and do everything in the client side controller itself. So that's one of the big difference. Why we go for a Lightning? Why the reason? Why, right? What's the reason that Lightning component development framework become become a hello? Can you put mute? Someone is unmuting.
Sir, here I have one of the small
Right?
doubt in this scenario. Shall I ask, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir,
Go ahead.
in a regular MVC in Apex and VF pages, we by using the view state, we will fetch the data and put in the view state, and from the view state we will get the data. So view state has work as a mediator in that. Coming to in Lightning part, we have the you are saying that there is a JS controller data storage. So in JS data storage, how the data object data is replacing in the JS data storage. In first transaction, entire data will be come from object and it is placed in the data storage, or how it will be reflect the replace the object data in data storage. That is my doubts.
See here, so that's going to be a topic. This here we are going to have attributes. Okay, like how you declare a member of your class, how you are declaring a member of your class. Similarly, for in your client side, I told the client side is again a controller. We are going to write the controller with the help of JavaScript, a Lightning based JavaScript code. So, and in your HTML UI part, we are going to declare a attribute. So attribute is where you are going to store the data temporarily. In attribute is a place where you are going to store the data temporarily. Okay, so whenever you get a response, a data from the server, we are going to maintain the data in the a temporary storage called attributes. So attribute is the one we are going to declare. We are not going to, only the attribute is going to store the data. It's not going to store like your view state. When the data will be stored in the view state, only for the variables, whatever variable you declare as a get set variable. Any variable in a class, if it is not declared as a get set, that will not be stored in view state. Similarly here, whatever the variable we are going to declare as a as an attribute, so an attribute is going to, so attribute is the one we mean here as a JavaScript data storage here. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Right. Okay. Right. So what are the other differences we have in the case of Visualforce Lightning Component Framework? In the case of Lightning Component Framework, we are not going to build every application in one component. We are not going to build every application in one component. In the case of Lightning, an application we are going to break into a different component. The application we are going to break into a different component. Your Lightning Component Framework is forced to break the component into different number of components. The Lightning Component Framework itself will force you to build the component in terms of number of components, not in one components. In the case of Visualforce page, we are going to develop just one page is going to have entire features of your application, right? If you take any an employee admission, for example, an employee joining page, so the entire page is going to have every part of the employee data that you are going to get. Like this, right? So what happens in the case of your Lightning? So this is your Visualforce page, your UF page application. UF page application is going to be every features that are going to develop in just one page, one single page is going to have every part of your application. Am I right? What happened? The same thing in the case of Lightning. A Lightning, you're going to build a different number of component. We're going to build a Lightning framework into different number of components. So I have a component one. I have a component one, right? And I have a component two, and I have component three. So there are three components I build. Okay, so this is my employee page. Okay, suppose I need I need to create a student page. I need to create a student page. I need not again redevelop the component to get the name and phone number of the student. There I can use the component I can use. Wherever I need to get the salary and city details. It can be an employee, it can be a student or customer. Wherever I need the salary and the city details, I will include the component C2. So wherever I need to get the salary and address details, I will include a component C3. Okay, so the Lightning Component Framework, we break the application into different number of components. Not like your Visualforce page. Visualforce page, we build entire application in one single page. But in the case of Lightning, the Lightning framework itself is force you to break the application into different number of components. We create a component once and use the component wherever I need it. Okay, similar to the employee page, if anywhere I need a salary and city details, I can use that component to implement that to bring that UI. I can use the salary and the C2 component wherever I'm going to get a salary and city details, right? So the C2, C1 and C2, C3 are the components here I meant for Lightning components, where I can reuse the component as many times I want. I create once, I can reuse it multiple times. Where Visualforce page will create entire application in one single page. If any modification I'm doing, for example, I'm going to add one additional field in my application. I'm going to add one additional field in my application. Okay, say an alternative phone number. I'm going to add an additional field, a other phone number I'm going to add. So what you will do in the case of your Visualforce page, I added this field, then I need to recompile the entire page. I need to recompile the entire page. Am I right? Even though I made just a small part of your page is modified, I need to recompile the entire page. When you recompile, what happens? Again, you are refreshing the metadata information of in your server, right? Because every page when you compiled it, the metadata will be created on the server side. So the metadata is again replaced with the new recompiled page. The metadata in the server we replace with the new recompiled page, but the changes, what's going to happen in the metadata, only the one part of the page is only modified, but we need to recompile the entire page, right? So what happened in the case of your Lightning framework, the component based framework? I'm going to add a field in my component 1. I'm going to add a field in my component 1 where I'm going to recompile a component C1 alone. I'm not going to recompile C2 and C3. I'm going to recompile only the component where I made the changes. Only that component alone is going to be recompiled, not the entire page. Not the entire page, right? So we are just talking about one simple page development, one simple page modification. What happens in the case of what happens in the case of the entire big an application or project? There are a lot of changes will happening, right? A lot of changes will do, to accommodate the user requirement, okay, to modify your application with respect to the new requirement. So we need to modify the page frequently. We need to modify the application frequently. Then what will happen? For every changes, we are going to recompile the entire application every time. But in the case of Lightning framework, it saves a recompile, and we are not going to recompile the entire application. We are going to work on that particular component alone. We are going to recompile only the component where you made changes. Okay, so we are working in the Salesforce is a multi-tenant architecture. Am I right? Salesforce is a multi-tenant architecture or multi-tenant, right? Multi-tenant is a terminology, is a pronunciation. You'll see it in the US. They follow it. We call it as multi-tenant, right? If you see the phonics, followed by them, multi-tenant. So multi-tenant architecture is nothing but a sharing architecture. What is sharing architecture? Yes, we are sharing the resources, right? The resources is nothing but your hardware, your network, everything we are sharing. Okay, so in the multi-tenant architecture, we have some rules within which we are developing our application. For example, we have the governor limits, right? We have governor limits in your Apex. So why we have governor limits? Not one user should use, okay, one user should not use entire resource. One user should not hold the entire resource. The reason we have the governor limits: how many number of SOQL you can run in one transaction, how many number of SOSL you can run in one transaction, how many DML is allowed in one transaction, right? So we have different number of different set of governor limits. Why the governor limit is implemented? The governor limit makes the user to work within the limit so that the other users will get benefited. You should not impact your process should not impact other users usage. Okay, so that's a big, that's the kind of discipline is being followed by the users in the multi-tenant architecture. That's a discipline is enforced by the Salesforce in terms of governor limits. So here, what happens if in the multi-tenant architecture, if the application is recompiled every time, that will add more overload to the server. Obviously, that will create a huge impact on the performance of the entire architecture. Okay, when you go for Lightning component framework, Lightning component based framework, we are able to make a huge difference in terms of in terms of modifying the component, in terms of increasing the reusability of the component, right? Reusability is increased, and right, and recompiling the pages, a component, compared to your traditional way of recompile the entire page, even though you modify only small part of the page. The Lightning framework, we are just going to modify only the part of the only the particular component. We will be able to follow this. So this makes a
Yes,
Lightning
yes, sir.
component framework. Yeah.
Sir, just one doubt in the previous chart diagram. Can you open that diagram, sir? Sir, here in employee page, we have the component like C1, C2, and C3. You are saying that while we change any changes in component C1, only that particular component will be compiled and remaining will be the remaining same. My doubt is while we compile the C1, it will goes to directly to the server and get back that information, or it will call the JS side server, client side server, or it will call the backend server,
See,
where it will goes and fetch the
see,
data.
no, Kiran, this is not the, this is not the, uh, the topic to go into the detail. That you will get clarity when we develop the component, when we, do that practically. So this is a kind of, the basic, uh, the informations, how the framework is different from, from the traditional framework. So that's the idea of the session now. Okay, that the technical part, right, how we, when you compile, how it is basically refreshed and all, I believe you'll get more clarity on the practical part. Okay, so just hold on that part. Yeah, I think it's too early to discuss that part now. May not make
Okay,
most sense now.
okay, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thanks for understanding. Yeah, right. So these are the differences. You can say, when you say Lightning based framework and your Visualforce framework. So basically, your Visualforce is basically you develop entire application in one page. But in the case of your Lightning, so break the application into different components, right? So there's a difference in Lightning and VF page, and here we get a response in HTML, and where we need to reload the entire page here. Okay, you get the response in JSON. It means we make a AJAX request here and get the response in JSON, right? So only the part of the page is being refreshed here. Okay, and here we have a view state. So we move away from the view state here. There is no view state here. Okay, so we are, because in AJAX request we are directly interacting with the server, right? In your AJAX JavaScript remote, using JavaScript remoting, you are interacting with your server, right? We are not going to, we are able to pass a data to the method directly. We are not going to have any get set variable. Even in AJAX toolkit, we are making interaction with the server directly. Okay. Right. This is an inbuilt property basically. It will not be a separate point. This is an inbuilt property. When you see the difference between the MUC and Lightning MUC. Okay. So here we have only Apex controller. What happens in this case? We have two server, a client side server, a client side controller. Okay, and Apex controller. So Apex controller is nothing but a server side controller. So what is the difference when you have a two controller here? Most of your data processing, most of our business logic, you are going to handle it in client side itself. Only when you need a right? Only when you need to interact with the database, only the part where we cannot do it using the client side controller, then we go to the server side controller. In the case of your classic Visualforce development, every part of the business logic, we need to go to the Apex controller. You will follow this? Am I right? And your Visualforce page, okay, is not responsive. It's for classic development. It's not for all devices. It's a kind of, you can develop a responsive application. When you say responsive application, it means what? The application will able to, you'll able to see the UI. The UI, the UI will be adjusted to display the informations in the tab. When the same UI, if you see it in your in your desktop, the response, okay, the UI will be, information will be properly rendered. When the same UI, if you display it in a tab, it will be properly rendered. In the case of classic application developed by Visualforce page, unless you embed any build a script to take care of the responsive part, by default Visualforce page is not responsive application. Okay, we need to depend on the script. The script plays a major role. Okay, but in the case of Lightning, by default is you can create a responsive application. When you say Lightning experience, how do you explain Lightning experience? Lightning experience is an application, is an interface which can be run in any type of devices, not only for a desktop. It's a responsive UI, and it's a rich UI, responsive and rich UI. The UI gives you a more modern look and feel. The UI gives you more modern look and feel compared to your classic UI. Okay, so apart from rich UI, it's a responsive. And what are the other big differences? It breaks the application to different number of components. It's a component-based framework. Okay, it's a component-based and event-driven framework. It's an event-driven framework, on button click, right? Based on all JavaScript event. When you go for JavaScript event, only, right? It's a client-side architecture. It's a client UI-based architecture. The Lightning framework is going to be a UI-based architecture. So in both the cases, we are going to have a Apex. We're going to have Apex. So Apex is always a the controller part to interact with the database. So Apex is going to remain the same, but there will be some rule we need to follow to connect your Lightning application with the Apex controller method. Okay, in order to how you are having your controller method in your Visualforce page, if you like to interact with the JavaScript remote, they have some annotation, right? They are going to have a @remote action annotation. Similarly, we are going to have an annotation here in order to connect with the Lightning UI. In order to connect with the Lightning UI, we are going to have an annotation. We are going to follow some annotation here. Okay, so apart from that, your Apex does not have any difference compared to your classic Apex controller. Right, when you say JavaScript, right, in the case of your Lightning UI, okay, in the case of your yes, the question you asked is whether we need to learn the JavaScript. Okay, so what are the prerequisite you need? What are the prerequisite you need to learn the Lightning component framework? you need to have some familiarity with the JavaScript, some basic knowledge. Okay, if you attended my, if you are, I think even any other trainers development course in Captain Info, no, you might have a session, basic JavaScript session. So, right, just to how to declare a variable, okay, how to call a function. So all those things, basic knowledge. Just I can say some familiarity with the JavaScript. Okay, why did I say some familiarity? Because in your Lightning framework, okay, in a Lightning framework, your client-side controller we are going to write with JavaScript. That's not the core JavaScript code. That's not the core JavaScript code. That JavaScript code is based on the Lightning-based JavaScript. Got me? So, but you'll see some similarity. Okay, if you know the JavaScript part, you'll know some similarities in terms of, okay, how to call the object, how to declare variable, okay, what is a callback function in your JavaScript remote, right? In your Visualforce framework, we do have a callback function, right? Okay, so you need not have a strong knowledge in JavaScript. That's not required. Okay, even if you do not have a basic knowledge also, I believe that can be easily catch up in the session itself. That can be easily catch up in the session itself. Okay, so by parallel, if that skill is required, you can parallel, you can also develop that skill. Okay, some familiarity. You should not see JavaScript is entirely a strange thing to you. Got me? That's what we need. Okay, so do not worry if you do not have any prior knowledge of JavaScript. If I say some familiarity, I believe that expose you can also get as part of the Lightning session itself. When you cover the examples, okay, we'll have such we'll explain that part. Wherever wherever you deal with the JavaScript part, we'll explain that part. I believe you can able to follow that. Okay, but these are all general prerequisite I'm talking about. Some exposure, some basic exposure to CSS, HTML, right? People should not see, CSS is a completely a strange scripting, or HTML is a completely a strange scripting. You should know what is HTML, what is CSS, okay, why we are using this, and any basic example how we are using this, right? In case if you are not familiar with this, okay, try to spend some time and know about this. But as part of the session, okay, I believe you are able to understand this, because we are going to start with the basic examples. Okay, before you get into any complex examples, we are going to start with the basic examples only. Okay, so those sessions will help you to understand the basics of JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Okay, you need not worry about that, but it's always advisable, suggestible to go through this part parallel. Okay, to pursue the to pursue the career in Lightning going forward, right? So spend some time to understand JavaScript, jQuery, CSS, HTML, and all. Okay, apart from that, to catch up the session, I believe you can able to catch up from the basic examples that what we are going to cover. Does that make sense to all of you? Able to follow? Right, you should have some development knowledge in Visualforce and Apex. Okay, right. So how the Visualforce page, right? So you then make it makes a huge difference, right? When you have already have exposure in writing the Apex and Visualforce page, so you're able to compare the framework much more easier, so that will also add more benefit. You'll be a quick learner, right? When you have a exposure to the VF and Apex development framework, you can able to compare the framework, right? Because what about the applications, what about the scope? When you talk about the scope, right, the old customers, there are millions of customers already been using a classic framework, right? A classic Salesforce. So so those customers are not going to replace every part of their project with a Lightning, but any new features they are going to, any a new application they are going to build, that would be maybe based on a Lightning. For any new customer who is very new to the Salesforce, right? So they will go with the Lightning applications. Okay, the old customer, any new features they are going to introduce, any new application they are going to build, they will prefer Lightning. Okay, they will prefer Lightning maybe 80%, 20% they go with the Classic, right? Because they are already familiar with the Classic application. Okay, so what about the new client? The new client will go with the Lightning. So Lightning is going to be the feature. Okay, in addition to that, LWC is also recently introduced by Salesforce. Okay, which is nothing but Lightning Web Component. So everything is going to be based on CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. Okay, CSS, HTML plays a major role in the Lightning Web Component Framework, which is also called LWC. So basically, we are going to develop an application based on web standards. We're going to build the application based on a web standard. Every applications, the open source applications like a JavaScript, any website you develop that is based on web standards. Your LWC is going to be on web standard, no standards provided by an organization to develop the web applications. Okay, so LWC basically you are moving towards the web standards. Okay, so LWC is a kind of extension with the Lightning. Okay, we are not going to replace the Lightning entirely. We are not going to move away from the Lightning framework entirely. The Lightning framework along with the LWC is going to be the future. Okay, so it takes time in the future. Maybe you land up with LWC completely, but right now LWC and Lightning going hand to hand in the future. Down the line, maybe 2 to 3 years later, you'll see you land up in LWC. You will be able to follow this. So we have a huge demand for your Lightning now. Yeah.
So are the Apex classes and all that?
It's for your
yeah.
questions.
Yeah, my question is.
Unmute and talk, Pradeep. Sorry, it's muted. Pradeep, unmute and talk.
Yeah. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so what we learned in the development class, Apex classes that remain same, right? The style we write the program and all, and only the UI part.
That remains same.
Okay, and
yes,
the follow-up
UI part is different, and you are going to yes.
Okay, my follow-up question is what we develop in the Lightning that will not work in the Classic, is it?
Your Visualforce page will work in Lightning, but Lightning will not work in Classic, right?
Okay, yeah, got it. Thank you.
You're right. Yes, we use a Lightning component development framework to develop the application to run in Lightning experience. Exact duration of the course. Okay, the duration of the course is going to be on weekdays. Okay, so Monday to Friday. I'm talking about my Indian time. Okay, I'm talking about Indian time. Monday to Friday, 7:30 p.m. IST to 9 p.m. IST. Okay, so 1.5 hours. So duration is going to be 25 to 30 working days. Got me? So this is duration. Okay, and we are also going to cover LWC as well. Got me? So the syllabus includes Lightning plus LWC. People follow this? And the notes will be shared, and you will get a recorded videos as well. Okay, so everyday session will be recorded and it will be shared. So starting from today, Okay, the whatever the session we we have discussed, we have gone through now, that will be recorded, and that will be shared. What about real-time training? It means it's going to be online course, ma. What do you mean by real-time training? Weekend. Oh, okay. Right. I think itself is see if I have a daily no sessions, weekends is a time for you to practice maybe. It's not one individual, right? Many of you get a time on the weekends, so the weekends will help you to so I take my time as well as you take the time to prepare on yourself. Okay, so I'll make sure you get more exercise for your practice on the weekends, so that itself you can. Yes, see Krishna, when you say real time, the examples what we are going to cover will help you understand the real time examples, okay, and real time scenarios we are going to cover, and to work in real time. So that's the objective of the course. Okay, so we
Yes,
are
sir.
going to have a project work at the end of the before you wind up the course, right? As part of the course, we are going to have one. We develop the projects as well. Okay, that project will give you more clarity on real time. More exposure to the real time scenarios, basically. Yeah. Yeah. See, it's going to be a 5 days course. Okay, it's going to be a 5 days a week, 25 to 30 working days. Tentative number of days. Sometimes it may extend. Depends upon how much examples you cover, how much that query clarification we have. Sometimes may extend. Okay, not extend more. May extend some a couple of days or something. And you're going to get detailed notes and everyday recorded videos, and you're going to have projects, and we'll have an interview type of discussion at the end. uh, okay, so that you will how will you face the interview with the lightnings. Okay,